Crisalion are an eVTOL company based out of Madrid in Spain. Manuel, I wonder if you could speak to me about the proposition you have. You've got a very interesting vehicle that's behind us.
Thank you very much, Nat. So I'm really happy to have this opportunity to discuss what we do. So we are a mobility company. We are developing a electric aircraft capable of vertical takeoff and landing. And it's unique because it's based on protected technology that we call fly-free, which has been developed with the purpose to make sure that it will be not only safe, of course safety is a given, we are an industry which is obsessed with safety with good reasons, but we want it to feel very safe. And the fly-free technology allows us to protect the cabin, isolate the cabin from any turbulence, wind gusts, to make sure that there's a very smooth ride and it's very comfortable for the passengers.
I noticed in your prototype there's a gimbal system on the rotors, and that is part of the fly-free technology?
Absolutely. The way I explain it for people who maybe have not seen it is if you imagine that you're hanging your aircraft from 4 typical quadcopter drones. And these drones would be connected just by a passive joint, so there's no actuation in the joint. You achieve the rotation and the tilting of the propulsion just by differential propulsion of the propellers. So the advantage of this system is that it has very low inertia, so you can tilt it very quickly and constantly correct for any turbulence, as I explained, to make sure that the cabin is not feeling any of this movement. If you have had the opportunity of flying on a light aircraft, the feeling is slightly different to what you fly on an airliner. These things move. And here our proposition is to transform air mobility in urban settings, so flying on light aircraft, low, in complex terrain, because there's big buildings and there's this kind of turbulences and gusts of air. So that's why we believe it's so important to have a system that is taking this into consideration and is ensuring that there is a smooth ride for the passengers.
And that gimbal system, is that also used for the transition from vertical flight into horizontal flight?
You're absolutely right. I was explaining the reason why we were researching on this topic, and the original driver was to ensure a comfortable ride. But then we found a number of, let's say, positive side effects. One of the most important ones is that it facilitates transition greatly. Transition is, as you know, a very critical phase of flight because it happens close to the ground at a moment where you still don't have any lift on your wings. And it can be quite difficult depending on the architecture of your aircraft. Okay, for us, it's a very natural transition because it's the way the system works anyway all the time. This is one of the examples, but then we found some other very good properties of the system. For example, when you're close to the ground, one typical failure mode for helicopters is when they caught on their own wake, and this can lead to loss of lift. With our system, we can tilt the system a little bit outwards, and we prevent this kind of failure, and we prevent this kind of a negative ground effect, if you want. The more we investigate the system, the more advantages we're finding.
And is this proprietary technology of yours?
Yes, this was developed in collaboration with the largest private R&D center in Spain called Tecnalia, but we have purchased the IP and it's protected all over the world.
That's fantastic. Can you speak to any other safety considerations that are built into the design?
Well, one of the things we've decided to do is to reduce the amount of risk as much as possible. So, yes, we have to be very disruptive on the electrical system because it's new, on the flight control system, but everywhere else we've gone from very conventional, tried and tested solutions. And the reason is simple. I mean, when you think about the regimes in which this kind of aircraft will fly, the speeds, the altitude, we've been there before. And there are many solutions that were used maybe 50, 60 years ago, which work really well. For example, if you look at the general architecture of the aircraft, it's very conventional design, straight wing, T-tail, and then, for instance, we incorporate in junkers and flaps, which, again, very robust, very sensible solutions. Maybe not looking as futuristic as other proposals, but we have the confidence that they work very well, and we have a lot of track record for them.
Manuel, can you speak to some of the environmental considerations of the design?
Yes. So this is one of the main drivers. Okay. So this whole industry appears because there are a number of new technologies that are enabling use cases that before you were not able to propose. Okay, and what is not to love? I mean, we're proposing something that is giving you the convenience of a helicopter, but with significantly reduced noise, with no emissions, and with lower cost. At the end of the day, this is a much simpler machine. It's a purely electrical machine. There is no wet systems, no fuel system, no pneumatics, no hydraulics. So the requirements for maintenance are significantly lower. We anticipate that the cost per passenger will be around 1/4 of what would be for an equivalent helicopter ride, okay, per passenger. So at the end of the day, what we're proposing is something that will be accessible for everyone. Yeah? Now, on top of this, for us, sustainability is a bit more than just reducing emissions and noise. At the end of the day, it's about, in our consideration, is giving people their time back.
It's not just about designing an aircraft, right?
It's the ecosystem. It's about cooking the cake before we discuss how we share it. Yeah? And for the next 2 to 3 years, there's many elements, many pieces of the Lego to put in place. We've discussed regulation, we've discussed the aircraft, but there are many other things, the vertiports, the infrastructure, the air traffic control. If we imagine hundreds of these aircraft flying over densely populated areas, the solutions we have today for air traffic control just don't scale that well. So we need to find something else. But many more things. Maintenance. The sort of maintenance network we have today is more geared towards long-distance airliners. We can travel long distance, and maybe you can live with just a few large maintenance centers in a large region. This will not be the case for this kind of aircraft. You need to think about something more similar to the sort of workshops we have for cars today. Insurance, for example. Insurance is fundamental for aviation, and it's an industry based on statistics. So how do you insure something which you don't still have the track record? All these questions, we need to work on that, and we need to work as an ecosystem. And it will take a few years still to put in place.
Manuel, what's your timeline to market, and where does certification feature in that timeline?
So we are targeting certification with EASA in 2030, around 2030, and entry into service in 2030. So today we are starting flight tests with a scaled-down model of our final design of the Integrity. We will be presenting our full-scale static aircraft next year in Le Bourget. And then after that we start flying with the full-scale aircraft around 2026. And the certification campaign is expected in 2028 to 2030.
Manuel, it's an amazing vehicle with some unique, amazing technology, and thanks so much for taking the time to talk to me today about it.
Thank you, Nat. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.